Follow me with your shape-shifting smiles and I see you. Maybe they'll believe you. Illuminati, occult dawn trial, silver discs and hidden files, and we see you. We've got to believe you. Blast off. Blast off. Blast off. Blast off.
Blast off on another episode of the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, also known as Hero Paranormal. My name is Ryan, the cryptozoological conductor of the airwaves, broadcasting from just south of Area 51 at the base of La Madre Mountain. We've got a lot coming to you today, and a lot of it has to do with skinwalkers, shapeshifters, and the like. Before we get to it, if you haven't been to heroparanormal.com, please check it out. We have a variety of content over there, a lot more than in the regular feed. Don't be scared of that green subscribe button. Smash it. And for less than the price of a cup of coffee a month, you can access everything over there. Just put I got 5 on it, and you're in. Also, don't be scared of that little shop. There's a small eBay store that you can access there with all kinds of swag, Hero Paranormal t-shirts, you name it. We have Spice Natural Bronze, which is an amazing hydrating, moisturizing body lotion, all made in-house by us. And you can access it 100% organic. It is good stuff for your body, your skin, and it'll keep it looking amazing throughout the winter. We also have a new line of soap bars, and man, all natural, smells awesome. I'm addicted to the stuff at this point. I am literally using so much of it that I think selling it is just kind of funding my usage of it. Great product. Anyway, check it all out. T-shirts, hats, swag, and most importantly, content at heroparanormal.com. Now, we're going to really get into it. We have a experiencer of a skinwalker sighting coming on today to talk about what it's like when you see one. There's a lot more of us out there than you would think who have experienced these things, who have seen these things. And, you know, on a recent podcast, I just talked about Tucker Carlson finally coming out and saying that he was assaulted by some sort of demonic entity in his bed. And, you know, I can relate with a lot of the stories that I've heard about these things. This stuff is more common than one might imagine. So we're going to get into all of that. If you have not been keeping up on the sightings of UFOs, they are off the chain. I would argue that we are very much in one of the most active UFO flaps, if you want to call it that, or activity areas right now, time-wise. The timeline is chock full of UFO sightings. Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, Manchester in the UK, of course, here in the United States. It's happening everywhere, and we're going to get into why that might be. If you haven't paid attention to the algorithm, the internet program, or the web bot that Cliff High, the researcher, has talked about, he predicted a virtual alien invasion beginning on December 3rd. Maybe he wasn't all that wrong. At least sightings have gone up through the roof and seem to be continuing. So we're going to get into that. But before we get into anything else, let's jam into this skinwalker sighting by a Uintah Basin resident. His name is Sean. I'm not going to give a last name, protecting identity. I'm not going to go into how I know him. I'm going to protect that. All I can tell you is he's a really good, honest guy, and I believe everything he says. He's one of the good ones, and this is going to be an amazing episode. So let's get to it. Sean, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Hey, Ryan. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, doing better now that I'm talking to you. It's the weekend's almost here, and I rather not discuss anything except for what we're discussing, so it's a good day.
I know how that goes.
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic because we've talked about this a little bit, and you're a Uintah Basin resident, and when you're in the basin and you start talking to people after living there a while, you realize that a lot more folks have seen things than initially led on. People usually don't want to talk about this stuff because of their work or their friends or their neighbors. But when you really get behind that initial layer of protection, you realize that quite a few people have seen quite a few things, both in the skies and on the ground. And I don't know where we want to kick off. I guess, what do you want to start with?
We could start off with around November 3rd. I was headed to work, and on my way through Randalet, just the other side on the east side, I seen a Skinwalker right off to one of the driveways right in there. He was more or less like a bear, Kind of looked like odd to me at first, and the thing that caught my attention was the eye shine of the bear face, and then I seen a human face underneath that. If that isn't weird, I don't know what is. It was bent over on all fours. The hind end was up higher than the front end, which is with a real bear. It's the opposite, I've seen many a bear. I know that one wasn't actually a full-fledged bear, It was just kind of sitting there prancing around and looked at me, and I kind of felt some energies off of it and put the pedal down and got the hell out of there,
Yeah.
Headed to work.
And, it's pretty common for that strange energy exchange that you're talking about where people kind of sense something that's a little off. What were the vibes that you got off of the sighting?
My hair stood up, Like not just the hair on the back of my neck, but every hair on my body. Got that tingly sensation. Well, you're about to be in trouble if you're not careful,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, for those that are listening in and aren't familiar with what we're talking about, the Skinwalkers in general are a type of harmful, shape-shifting entity, a witch that has the ability to turn into or disguise themselves or possess the animal they want to appear as. And it's something that is seen a lot throughout the southwestern United States, but specifically a lot in this particular area you're discussing and down in the Four Corners region. And this area you're discussing, that you actually work there, so you're in the area a lot, and you're probably in a position to see things more than other people, right?
Yeah, I'm way out in the middle of nowhere when I'm working, so it gets pretty wild. See things that aren't supposed to be there, and
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That normal society say wouldn't exist. You know what I mean? And like UAPs,
and
a lot of the mornings going to work, I see UAPs up there dancing around, racing around.
And that's what I was just going to...
They'll come on and then they'll dissipate,
Mm-hmm. What do they usually look like in the mornings?
They're over towards the east, towards Colorado, and sometimes we're going straight down the Randalet Road, going over to the Ouray Road. It's just straight dead ahead. And they'll go up, they'll go down, look like they're landing, taking off. Sometimes it looks like they're drag racing each other, just zipping back and forth, and it gets pretty wild. Sometimes I'll call you and tell you, hey, check your cameras out there, you know.
It's true. And a lot of times they're on there. It's pretty wild how many things are spotted in the skies over this particular area. Why do you think this area, in your opinion, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, but why is there so much going on?
I think it's a number of different reasons. I think there's a lot of radioactivity. I think there's a lot of underground water sources. I think there's some old energies around here that they are attracted to, you know. And it brings out the whole spectrum of what you study, you know. I think some things are different than what other people think, you know. I don't believe that the Utes actually were able to imprison any of the Navajo, but I think the Navajo is a much stronger tribe, you know. But that's just my opinion, you know.
And there's a lot of history. There's a lot of history out there, too.
Yeah, not with just the Utes, but the Shoshone. There's a lot of this land used to be Shoshone, too, you know. And, of course, there's older tribes than that, like the Fremonts, and, you know, but there's records of what they put all over on their petroglyphs everywhere. I think stuff has been going on here for a long, long time. And it's hard to say how long, but thousands of years, possibly.
I don't think you're wrong. Do you think the government has a hand in it? A lot of folks have been coming out with all the UAP and UFO sightings, and you know, UAP is kind of a new term, that unidentified aerial phenomenon term. That's one way that the government was able to sort of have information on the subject, but not have it searchable through the traditional UFO term. They started putting UAP in the paperwork instead of UFO, and it worked for a while. But now the secret is out as far as UAP. Do you think that the government is still hiding a hard truth about unidentified anomalous phenomenon?
Honestly, I do. I think they want to hide as much as they can, and they'll keep doing that for as long as they can, you know. I think, in a way, a part of me thinks that they have actually met them and they're working with them in some things, you know. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
I think you have a really good assessment there because, you know, preliminary intelligence records coming out of the National Intelligence Office, and as you said, there's always been, you know, oh, sure, these proposals, we'll get our best crack team on this, and we'll look into it. They did it before with other projects, and they've done it recently. And you always get the directors coming out of the office saying the same thing at the end of these task forces, basically saying, oh, we looked into it. There's a lot there, but there's nothing to worry about. Move along. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
It is, and it seems like the sightings are coming more and more often here lately, too, you know, especially around here. More and more people I run into every day are like, man, I seen something this morning. And I'd ask them, all right, tell me about it. Tell them, well, if you want to get a hold of some people, I know some people that investigate this stuff, but, you know, they don't want to go that far. They want to keep their information hidden, as far as who they are, And I tell them they won't bring up your names. It's totally up to you how you want to go about it. But they still don't want to. So I just kind of, this was seen today, and bring it up to other people's attentions.
And I mean, this stuff is pretty frequent, isn't it? We were discussing that yourself and your daughter, you're a wonderful dad, by the way, that you guys actually saw a sighting last night. These are pretty frequent, aren't they?
Yes, almost every single evening or morning, sometimes daylight. It's not very often I go a full 24 hours without seeing something, I don't know why I see them so much, but I guess in a way I'm getting myself trained to look for what's out there,
Mm-hmm.
I think the more you see them, the more they open up to you, too.
I believe that, too.
It kind of goes right down Pandora's box, getting deeper into the hole. It just happens more and more.
And there is, at least in a lot of the paperwork, whether these older projects that we were discussing or the more modern consolidated projects like Arrow, for those who are unfamiliar with it, that is the name for the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. This is the most recent task force into looking into the weirdness, which is basically classified as unidentified anomalous phenomena. And they are finding that those who look up see things more often. And it might be a case of just looking up. It reminds me of that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio called Don't Look Up, where it was the opposite, where there was a meteor barreling towards Earth, and basically the government said, hey, just don't look up and go on with your day-to-day activities like that's not coming at us. That's kind of funny because it's sort of the opposite. It's still don't look up, but it's for an entirely different reason. What are your thoughts on that?
I think more of that stuff is going to come to light with us in the future, but, they're not going to be able to keep hiding it, if that makes sense. And a lot of people that don't look up and don't know what they're looking for, eventually they're going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know, it just kind of trying to look for the words for this. I think once you get opened up to it, and realize there's more out there, I think the more you're going to see.
I think you're right. Even when you look at the reports provided by the Department of Defense in response to people, basically going to Congress and saying, you need to look into this. I mentioned Arrow, and that task force allegedly resolved 118 cases during the reporting period for 2024, all of which they said were prosaic objects. So basically, they said everything was either balloons, birds, satellites, unmanned aerial systems, aka drones, and aircraft. And that seems really hard to believe when you actually witness the activity, because a lot of times, in my experience, people who have these sightings know what those things look like, and these things don't act in any way like any of those things. What are your thoughts? Do you think that there's a possibility these things could be balloons, birds, drones, or other aircraft?
Well, there was one incident. I seen something, and thought, oh man, am I seeing a UAP? But, through trial and error and kind of investigating into it and getting some friends involved, I came to the conclusion that it was an actual balloon,
Mm-hmm.
But that's what people really have to do, is learn how to research it and come up with what it really is, If you can't explain it, then most likely it's going to be something out of this world,
That's right. That's right. And I want to double back because I think I said 2024 for Arrow. It was actually, I actually think the Arrow report went from May 1st, 2023 to June 1st, 2024. But most of the sightings were in 2024, and that's when they reported on them. And, to say, I mean, there were 757 reports. At least, and this is a drop in the bucket compared to what people are seeing and not reporting. I think that's the important thing. When you talk to folks in the basin, for example, most people will say, oh yeah, stuff happens, and leave it at that. If you dig a little deeper, they'll tell you about somebody who may have seen something, and if you dig a little deeper than that, there's usually some account of some first person situation where they actually saw something, but they're not sure. Why is it that people still feel so, I guess the question is, embarrassed to admit they may have seen something?
I honestly can't answer that question. I think they're afraid people will think they're crazy or something, when in fact they're being perfectly sane, because that stuff really does exist. A lot of us have seen it.
Oh, you bet I have. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
And most of my family has seen things. But, you get those certain people that think it's, oh, that doesn't exist. They don't believe in it. So when they see something, oh, that couldn't have been a UFO. It don't exist, I'm just going to shut up and not talk about it. I can't make myself look bad because I never believed in this stuff,
Yeah, it is one of those, even the anthropologists that look at why so many people see these things have, noted that there's something going on. I mean, we have projects like the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which was known as ATIP, that has now been sort of declassified by the Pentagon after a 5-year period. And, reality has struck that its sources clearly said that some of the ships in question could not be linked to any country. In other words, the implication is that they might be from somewhere else or somebody else, or not necessarily, quote unquote, ours. Now, I think that our military probably has some pretty outrageous toys and stuff, but what are your thoughts? Do you think that some of this stuff might not be ours?
I think quite a bit of it isn't ours. I do think some of it, however, is, because they won't release their technology to the public. It's our military's technology is far beyond what we really know, and it's always been that way. They won't release it for 15 years, or when a war breaks out, and, whoa, look at that stealth bomber, when that came out and they opened up to the public and watch someone shoot a missile right down a chimney stack in a house, laser guided. He's like, whoa! And that was quite a while back,
Yeah, the technology, that is such a great example, Sean, because nobody was believing any of the folks out in Tonopah, the residents that were seeing that craft on a regular basis. Nobody was believing them until, boom, there was proof, and then everybody was asking them more. And the bottom line is it reveals that humanity does keep secrets from itself. And, it makes me wonder, there is our stuff, which is really amazing. I'm pretty sure some of the stuff people see and some of the stuff I've seen in the skies is our military, and that makes me proud. I say good for us. But I'm also pretty sure we're not alone, and maybe we never were. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you there. I think we've been visited many, many times by many different types, I think probably roughly, just to give a percentage off the top of my head, I'd say around 30 or 40% is actually our military or another country's military. But some of that stuff, we do not absolutely have the technology to make some of this stuff with the G-forces it would put out, with some of the things we've seen just around here, how fast those things can go from zero to however fast that is, that'd tear a human body apart. There's no way we could do that, as far as I know anyway. But, we couldn't withstand the G-forces of it, let alone have something be that fast,
Mm-hmm. And a really big thing that you pointed out is the compelling truth that this stuff can affect humans that are riding in these. Obviously, if the technology is great enough, maybe there's a way around those G-forces. But another thing that might affect people and can't really be explained by the prosaic explanations that we're being handed are alien abductions. For years, centuries, there's been this captivating world of abduction scenarios where people delve into what they honestly believe are contact with entities that aren't humans. And there's a lot of theories, scientific and otherwise, but a lot of these personal stories and encounters involve UFOs. Why is that?
I think they were being a test subject without their permission, They look into us, too. It makes you wonder, really, where do we come from, We got all this. There's quite a few abduction stories out there, too, that I've seen. I'm sure you've heard of way more than I have, but I'm just an oil field worker. I don't even get into it real hard, It just happens and happens. But, there are people that get certain energies just off of seeing them, and open them up. And there's other people that get abducted, and you're like, whoa, hello. Tell me about it. I want to learn more,
And,
It's actually a pretty scary experience from what I understand, because they don't really have any say or any way to fight back,
Yeah, it's spooky. And as far as being just an oil worker, I wouldn't say that, because some of the most amazing reports that I've gotten have been from people in the field, people that are exactly like yours. In fact, one of the very first, most interesting reports I ever came across happened back in the 70s, right back in that same field you're working down there. And it was a water truck driver, if I'm not mistaken, and he just pulled over to the side of the road to kind of, on those, how those hard, dusty roads are. He pulled over on the side to just catch a couple Z's before his next shift. And he said he saw something walk out from those Badlands, something big, something dark, and it was investigating his truck. He grabbed his weapon, he had a gun with him, and he said this thing started pushing on the truck, and the whole truck started moving back and forth. And this was a triple back then. And I mean, a person would have to be pretty big to make one of those trucks. You drive these trucks, you know what I'm talking about. To make a truck move the way he explained it. And he's not the only one. You run into these things over and over again. And I would argue that oil field workers have some of the most amazing sightings because they're out there by themselves oftentimes in the middle of the Badlands where this is known to happen and with no one else around. And I think it's pretty controversial, but I'd say oil workers probably see more than just about anybody.
Yeah, a lot of times we're by ourselves, and so you don't have anybody else that sees it, and you're like, damn, am I that tired, or did I really see that? You know? But boy, there are some really spooky places out there. I'll tell you what, I need to take you out to one area. In the dark, it makes your skin crawl just being there.
I like that sort of thing. I don't know what's wrong with me, but there's a bunch of them. There's the horse fields, all of Ouray, the river bottoms. I mean, everywhere around Pelican, and the list goes on and on. And you know, it's not just these firsthand testimonies and the effects it has on a lot of the people working in these areas, but there is, as you mentioned, tradition, myth, and lore that goes with this area hand in hand for at least 15 generations verbally with the indigenous tribes. They were seeing these things too. This isn't something new.
I believe it. I believe it's been going on for a long time. There's a lot of old places out there, you know, that really do not change at all. Even with the floods, everything, it just, there's so much silt and so much everything, it just stays just like how it is, you know. And like I say, I think there's a lot of uranium and radium, you know, and radon and quite a few things like that, too, with it. And you never know what it could actually be, you know. There's those areas I do not like to go to in the dark. Let alone just the wildlife, but some of the things you feel out there sometimes, it just really just makes your skin crawl. You're like, I need to get out of here and get out of here now. That's what your inner voice is telling you, you know.
Yeah. And, you know, you've touched on something that's really interesting. You mentioned uranium and radon and all these other things, which in and of themselves, I think, are a big key to all this, meaning that there's stuff, there's resources, there are items underground. Oil's one of them. I mean, that's why we're out there. That's why we've got the drill rigs going, is we all need oil. And that's definitely...
There's a lot of gilsonite out that way.
Yup, gilsonite. And when it comes to the earth, I would argue that the depths of our earth hold extensive cave systems that honeycomb, and there may be things down there we don't know about. Do you think that's possible, that there's more under the ground than we're aware of?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think there's also a lot of aquifers down all throughout here, too. Take you to some places where the water just goes into the ground, and they can't figure out where it goes to, you know. We don't know if it goes out to the ocean. They don't know if it goes down Arizona or where, you know. But there's natural aquifers all over. I used to do water wells for a living for a little while, and there'd be some we'd drill into. And you wouldn't even really have to put a pump on it. It was shooting out of the ground so hard that it was like it was pressurized, you know, coming at us. Crystal clear, good drinking water. You didn't have to do nothing to it, you know. That's all over Roosevelt and Vernal. And I haven't done too many over by Duchesne, but all of them we did do were pretty good,
And the drilling, I think maybe even the drilling down into the earth might have something to do with some of the high strangeness encountered. There's a theory there in shapeshifter territory that if you dig or if you disturb the earth, you can kind of activate the energies. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of Native Americans will tell you you're not supposed to do that, Leave the earth alone. Just live off of it. You do not need to drill into it. You don't need to dig into it. But I think you're right on that. I think some of the wells and everything, some of them go upwards of the 10,000 foot deep, even more, Makes you wonder what they're really drilling into,
This is a huge question. And I'm glad you brought up this is an enigma. I'm glad you brought up how deep some of these wells go, because they're really deep. And it's really amazing the technology we have and that we can go this deep. The strange thing is that the deepest hole that's ever been dug is something like 40,230 feet, and they called it
Russia.
Yeah, over in Russia. Yeah, you're familiar with it. And I mean, that's mind-boggling, and yet at the same
they had to stop because it kept melting their bit.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane. And yet, at the same time, when you look at the Earth, that's still just basically the crust. We haven't gotten down to the mantle. We haven't gotten down to the outer core. We haven't gotten down to the inner core. And it really begs to, question what's down there. Because obviously we guess, but it's sort of like a mosquito guessing what's inside of us, right? It really doesn't know, right?
Yeah, I believe it. I agree with you there. It's some things we shouldn't do too, trying to drill into the earth that deep. And I think one of these days the earth is going to come back to haunt us with all this, if we don't get it together. And
that's the truth. The technology is amazing, and it's not just the vertical drilling; it's also this horizontal drilling that blows my mind. How you guys can do that? I won't even bring that up because that technology. It seems like the type of technology the military would have, not something, but it's amazing. But yeah, there might be something.
My brother's down in Texas right now on some wells down there. They're going 10,000 feet straight down, and then they're going another 10,000 feet horizontally. It's amazing how he can make that happen,
Mind-blowing. The technology.
Exactly where their bed is and right exactly what direction that hole is, right where it's headed, right where they're going to stop. They can hit it right within a 3-foot difference,
That's right. And, but before we get off the topic of, these strange abductions, the technologies, the government may be being involved, I have to bring this up, because if we bring up human abduction and human implants and all of this, there's no way to get around skirting the fact that a lot of cattle are also mutilated, messed with, left in positions where it's difficult to explain what transpired, how they demised in the Uintah Basin of Utah, Wyoming, the Four Corners area. I mean, all over. Colorado's got a ton of them. What are your thoughts on the whole cattle mutilation topic? You probably talked to quite a few ranchers and know a few of them. What do you think?
Well, it's something without our technology, it's beyond our technology. Because there won't be a spot of blood on the ground when it happens, There'll be organs missing, certain things missing, and you're just like, wow. And it's laser precision cutting, and I don't even know if there's a knife that can do it that perfect without spilling blood, It's kind of almost scary because it happens so close to home, I've got quite a few friends that are in the cattle industry that it's happened with, and the fact that they can totally mutilate a cow, be some of the organs gone, all of the organs gone, that's different every time, but still one thing in common, not a drop of blood on the ground anywhere. And sometimes it's almost like they're dropped and there's an impression,
Mm-hmm.
From like a 50 or 100-foot drop or even more, there's a dent in the ground where they lay. And they don't decompose either, is another weird fact. Natural decomposing, happens so fast that, hey, it's gone now, and some of those guys are coming back years later, and holy crap, it's still here. Nothing will touch it, nothing will do anything, not even the flies. And that's pretty bad, because the fly will eat some weird stuff.
You're not kidding.
So therefore, there's no maggots to help it decompose or anything, and it's like, what in the hell is making it to where it won't decompose, even? And then you wonder, should we even be here? Should anybody ever be here, Kind of putting yourself at risk even looking at it. A lot of things have happened around Craig and Meeker and up by Steamboat, all through the Uintah Basin. I haven't heard much out of Rangeley, but Montrose, Delta, and then, like you say, down by the Four Corners, there's a lot of strange stuff happening down there. I can't explain the cattle mutilations other than I think it's something else doing it, and I don't know why. But it'd be an interesting one to dive into and research and find out, Maybe we should start doing that.
Yeah, it is really mind-blowing, the countless reports filed, and the implications are chilling. I lost a friend of mine who was a great researcher looking into this, Christopher O'Brien, and he just passed. The late great Chris O'Brien. He wrote some books on it. Did thousands and thousands of hours of investigation, and he's a great author as well. He's actually the guy who set me up with the UFO DAP system that we use out there at the base camp at spacewolfresearch.com. And he, brought up a lot of good questions. And it's almost like the greatest serial killer crime spree of all time without a perpetrator, right? And it's against animals, so it's impossible to really know why. But you have to wonder, is something gathering genetic material for specific purposes off of these animals? Is the military conducting secret projects that are doing something along the same lines, which makes a little less sense to me? Or is it something entirely different? It's really, really one of those things that we've been dealing with as, a population and verifying and documenting for over 50 years, and we still are kind of at square one. I mean, we got some interesting analysis, and we've got some great reports and some theories, but the truth is we don't know much more than we did originally.
I don't think it would be our military. I don't think they have that kind of technology even yet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's either something from another dimension or something from another planet, you know? But I agree with you on one thing. I think they are like doing some cloning or getting the DNA makeup and genetic makeup of cows. And maybe they messed up and they don't exist in their world anymore. I don't know if they even had them or why they do it. You know, it's crazy, but I don't think our military could do that and not leave a drop of blood on the ground, you know.
This is huge because there are some cases. One in particular comes to mind that happened right there in shapeshifter territory, right there near the boundary of Space Wolf research. And, you know, we're talking about cases that people are sometimes not that far away from these animals when it transpires, and from one moment to the next, without hearing a sound, they realize that an animal has been taken out. And like you said, Sean, the technology involved, there's usually no blood left in the animal. There is complete exsanguination. It's wild. It seems like the machinery or the device or the cutting edges are not only surgically precise, but extremely heavy, like with weight and mass behind them, because they go through all the tissue, the bone, you name it, with surgical precision. Like you said, I don't know why anything would do these things. It's almost as if they're removed from the area, it's done somewhere else, and then they're dropped back.
I've heard cases go both ways, people's thoughts with a lot of the cases, you know, thinking that the cow was removed and then dropped back, and then other times it happened so fast, and like you say, you know, but still the cow's just there, poof. Dead, done. I've heard some pretty good theories on certain genetics of cows, you know. It's like one type of cattle will not get touched, one type of cattle can't keep from getting touched, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But someone was telling me once of a case that happened right out there to where 3 cows came up missing. 2 of them they never found. One of them ended up in a pen down in Mighton, way out south by Pheasant Valley, you know, a few years ago. And you're like, how in the hell did that happen? They got to looking, no tracks, no nothing, you know. There wasn't no tire tracks, no footprints, no nothing other than the cow prints in the pasture where it ended up. So how did that one get dropped there, you know? And why is the big question too. But
yeah, they've even found them. They've even found them in trees before, which is absolutely unbelievable. And you brought a really good connection up. And that's the fact that there are no Brahmin cattle mutilations. And, you know, I've looked into this. I was recently in Costa Rica, and they have mostly Brahma cattle down there. And this is a particular type of breed that sort of kind of has that lump on their back. They are naturally a little more resilient towards diseases and used a lot in Central America and India. And for some reason, there are no Brahma mutilations. They're after particular breeds. Angus being one of them. Black Angus is preferential. But yeah, there seems to be something genetic. There's a genetic marker that's being, and like you said, if this was just a random animal sacrifice or a group doing this or, the military, they wouldn't care. But instead, there seems to be a relationship with the genetics of the cows, which is really wild. And they are a food source of ours, which kind of makes me uneasy, because if they're checking out our food sources, whoever they are, it might have something to do with us.
I think with all the abductions and the cattle mutilations, I think they know more about us than we do.
You might be right, yeah.
I think they'd know exactly how to help us or hinder us, Hurt us or help us.
And, Colm Kelleher, he was on the National Institute for Discovery Science Board, and he was a lead investigator, and he knows the Uintah Basin area and shapeshifter territory and that whole region very well. And he did a multi-layered investigation into these cattle mutilations from an interesting angle. And he found that there's a potential theory that goes into bovine spongiform encephalopathy, which is like mad cow disease, and that there is something in the prions, which are really strange. These are special proteins, and he thought that maybe something might be monitoring these prions, or this mad cow disease, or this bovine spongiform encephalopathy. I believe it's Crutchfield-Jacobs disease in humans, but that's even stranger because, why? Why would anything be monitoring us or our food sources without us knowing about it? Or what? It's just baffling.
It really makes you wonder, are they keeping their eye out for us, or more or less keeping their eye out for the cattle,
That's where I was going with it. Maybe they're keeping their eye out for us in some cases, and maybe not in others. And that's kind of the trend, right? Is you have these groups in the UFO culture that believe that aliens are space brothers, extraterrestrials are completely harmless, and they're our friends. And then you have other groups that are more open-minded, in my opinion, and believe that there may be a plethora of different species or races, or maybe not so well-intentioned versions of these extraterrestrials. I'm more apt to believe that there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. A lot like humankind itself. It's hard to point at an airplane flying through the sky and say, those are the good guys. Well, no, there's a bunch of guys on that, and they're not all good, and they're not all bad. Most of them it's a gray area, and maybe that's why we call them grays, but it's definitely interesting how different UFO theories have good guys, bad guys, and what are your thoughts? Do you think that there is... Well, are they looking out for us? Are they benevolent? Are they malevolent? Or do you think it's a mix?
I think it's a full spectrum of the mix. It's kind of like within humans, you see good people, bad people, it goes all the ways. But I think there's different species out there, and each one's intentions are different with us. If that makes sense. I think there are some that really do look out for us and help us and, keep us from getting in trouble with the bad ones out there. And the bad ones are always trying to get in and do their crap too, I think there's so many different species, though. I honestly believe there are some of them that actually live with us, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no proof of it. one of those weird things that kind of pops into your head, you know?
I think you're right. I think you're right, yeah.
Someday, maybe we'll all come up with proof of everything and be able to really know, you know, but right now we're kind of lacking the knowledge with it. But boy, won't that be interesting when we do know. I don't know if we'll see it in our generation, though.
You know, I used to think that too, that we wouldn't see it in our generation, but man, are things ramping up. I'm not going to hold my breath, but it's looking better. And, you know, I think that you're right. Some of them may be looking out for us, and I only mention that because of all the strange events where UFOs and UAP activity are near nuclear weapons sites. This seems to kind of go hand in hand with something very strange, and that is that there are extraordinary encounters at weapons sites. You know, one was just over the border in Wyoming, where one missile base was unable to communicate with several of its launch control capsules as a huge cigar-shaped UFO flew over them. And we hear about, that's just one case, but there's a lot of cases like this where in some event, like...
I've heard of a few of them myself, and for them to be able to shut down our entire nuclear system, you know, to where we can't do nothing, including the nuclear power plants, you know.
That's a huge one.
To be able to shut them down just by flying over, you're like, okay, that's definitely not human.
It's a significant possibility there that they're keeping it. Maybe we have a toy they don't like us to have, right?
Yeah, I believe it. You know, honestly, we could really get in trouble with some of the toys we have right now. Not just our country, but worldwide. And I've heard of it happening in other countries, too, you know. And boy, they seem to swarm those areas. But big question is why do they swarm the Uintah Basin like that, you know, too? And I'm hearing things about southern Utah that are also happening. Getting crazy down there, too.
You bet it is.
They say it's just as active, or if not more active, than the Uintah Basin, you know. But could that be that they're opening up to us and don't care anymore if we see them? And, hey, we are here, don't trust your government, whatever, you know. So many questions could come out of that, you know. What's your thoughts?
This is such a good discussion because, yes, I think, you know, it is really strange where they're showing up. Like you said, why in the Uintah Basin of Utah? I understand UFOs showing up during wartime scenarios. People are claiming that they're seeing more UFOs. For example, there's that Mosul orb video that Jeremy Corbell leaked that somebody gave to him. And I've spoken with Jeremy about it, and I believe that, yes, UFOs are around more often during wartime scenarios. They've been reporting a lot more of them in Russia and the Ukraine, in the Middle East during these skirmishes. Supposedly, UFOs aided George Washington in winning the American Revolution, if you go way back then. They're also reported over Normandy on D-Day. They called them Foo Fighters by the World War II pilots. They claim to have seen them in Vietnam. And they seem to plague these wartime scenarios. But when you find these hot spots, like southern Utah, like the Uintah Basin of Utah, and you see mysterious UFOs on a regular basis, you got to wonder, what's bringing them there? Why are they seen so often, right?
Yes, for sure. I don't know what's around here that would bring him, so we got to figure that out. Like I say, every morning on my way to work almost, unless it's cloudy, or sometimes even when it's cloudy, I still see him, It just becomes your norm, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You get so used to seeing them all the time, you're like, hey, there's another one. Hi, guys. I don't know if that would blow somebody's rocker or not, but it really does happen quite a bit. And then you take into effect how many other people are seeing them with the storms, without the storms, broad daylight, Walk outside, oh, check that out. I've seen cigar-shaped ones out when I was working, following the jet. And you're like, okay, hope that guy's okay. Wonder who's flying in the jet. Getting that full escort there. That kind of sounds off the rocker, but you really wonder, Some of the questions that fly through my mind, it's just like, okay, I just better calm myself down and get back to work,
There's interesting stuff in the basin. I think anybody would agree that's gone there, whether it's in the skies, on the ground, cryptozoological variants, like we spoke of, the Skinwalkers, but also natural resources. There's a naturally occurring soluble solid hydrocarbon known as gilsonite that, these things are not found everywhere. And I just came across, I didn't know this, but, it was first found right there near Bonanza. And, this is stuff that originally even the Ford Motor Company was using on their Model T cars. This is really amazing. The composition, the reserves, the veins underground. And I'm sure
You'd be surprised at how much you actually do use gilsonite. It's in the ink, it's in the paints, it's in the asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
And the Uintah Basin has the best concentration of it. It's the highest grade with the best concentration. It goes all the way from clear out by Bonanza, clear over to Mighton. There's mines all through there. And instead of like a coal mine runs horizontal veins, like with the horizon. The gilsonite mines, their veins are vertical. And you can get into a vein there. I've been inside the mines. That was one of my first jobs out of high school, was working in gilsonite mines. But they can be anywhere from 2 feet wide to 4 feet wide and 4,000 foot deep. It's like being in a gigantic trench,
So creepy, right? Like, it's just creepy.
You can hold them lighter to it while it's in the rock form, and it'll melt. But the second you get it in the dust form, which many different types of things can do this, but the dust form, it's highly explosive. So if you get too much dust with a spark, like back in the early 40s, 50s, right in there, they had a mine explosion that blew power lines over 45 miles away. That's how intense the explosion was. I got out of it because we had a silo explode where I was working, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And then idiot me went to work in the coal mine,
You have amazing knowledge about it, though. It's such an interesting factor to the area. And as you know, there are very strange electromagnetic frequencies in the Uintah Basin of Utah. And gilsonite's also an electrical insulator. So you have to wonder, electrically what's going on. There's strange radiation in the area, whether it's of the electromagnetic variety or otherwise, and all kinds of anomalous electrical things transpire there. As you know, you've been out to Space Wolf research, and that whole area in the basin, people will have strange things happen with their phones, electrical devices. Sometimes their batteries will discharge very quickly, sometimes even on vehicles. Why do you think there's this electrical component to the high strangeness?
I'm not completely sure. I think there's a certain type of mineral that charges and discharges all your electrical devices. It's kind of my own little theory, but, I'm not a scientist or anything like that. And I might be way off base, but be a certain mineral out there that's not found anywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like gilsonite that they haven't discovered yet, which they're discovering all kinds of stuff around all the time. But, there is it's a mineral-rich area completely with the oil, the gas, the gilsonite, the coal, the phosphate. There's old copper mines. There's, you name it, it's out here. There's a lot of crystals. There's all kinds of stuff, You get into that end of the spectrum, you can find almost anything you want, from tourmaline to gold to different types of crystals to, many different minerals, rocks. A lot of it's such an old bed, like a seabed, that it's hard to say what all is in there. I think there's a lot of meteorites and stuff like that, that are from other places, not from Earth. And it's hard to say what all is right there,
Mm-hmm.
And even with the oil wells and everything else out around Skinwalker Ranch and Space Wolf, and it's hard to say what other minerals are right down under that. It seems to be a high concentration of them to where it can drain your battery in an instant. Or charge it,
It's an amazing area. I mean, whether you're talking about the homesteaders that moved out there, the outlaws, the indigenous people, I mean, some of the most amazing petroglyphs, I would argue, in the entire world. In fact, 9 Mile Canyon supposedly has more petroglyphs than anywhere else on the planet. And as you know, McConkey Ranch is absolutely amazing. But there's also tons of dinosaurs. There are these. It's a national monument just when it comes to exploring the dinosaurs that are held within the earth of this particular region. It just seems like everything in the area is amazing, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. I know you're a busy guy, Sean, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your experiences and, what you've seen, what you've experienced, and your thoughts on it. Keep your eyes out there looking, and let us know if you find anything else.
I will do. Anything I see or whatever, I'll keep you informed on it. And boy, I was thinking about your petroglyphs, and boy, they're all over around here. One of these days, I'll have to take you up to Island Park and show you some of those.
That would be great. That would be awesome.
It's on the north side of the National Monument, for the Dinosaur National Monument. There's some pretty cool petroglyphs up that way, too. And some of the stories I've heard about that area I'll have to inform you on too, but it'd be kind of wild.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
It'd be a world trip for us.
And as we kind of wrap things up here, Sean, any closing statements or any reflections on what we've talked about or things you want to touch base on?
Not that I can think. We've actually covered quite a bit. I think, honestly, with people like you out working what you do, I think we're going to get closer to the answers here pretty soon. You're doing great work, Ryan.
Well, thank you, Sean, and I can't do any of it without folks like you, so I appreciate you.
I think you took the reins of Junior Hicks pretty well, you know. Like, he was quite the man. I knew him way back, and some of the stories I've mentioned were from him, you know, but like the cattle ending up down in Mighton, you know. But
he was he was an amazing guy.
I think you're doing better work than the Skinwalker Ranch people by far, but one thing you got that they don't is you actually share it with the people. You're more open to it, you know, more open about it.
Well, it's bigger than any one of us. It's a big puzzle. I think we all have pieces to it, and we gotta get those pieces all together, because this mystery is a lot bigger than any one of us, and I think eventually we're all gonna help kind of paint a better picture for the next generation that's coming, so they can kind of pick up where we left off and see where they're gonna head with it, because so far, it just, you know, these mysteries hold a lot more than I think we know at the moment. And the picture's getting brighter. We're finding out more. The theories are getting good. The hypotheses keep coming, but the mystery's bigger than any one of us.
I agree with you there.
Thanks so much, Sean. I hope you have a blessed weekend, and I hope to talk to you soon.
All right. You have a blessed weekend, too, and thank you.
Man, what a great conversation. I love talking to Sean. He is just a regular guy living in an interesting place where things can be seen on a regular basis if you just look up. And he's aware of his surroundings. He's aware of what's going on, and he's always keeping an eye out, because once you see these things, you have a tendency to potentially see them again. As a Bureau of Indian Affairs officer I spoke to put it so eloquently, it's not a matter of if you're going to see something, it's a matter of when you're going to see something. Keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around. Have a blessed weekend. And don't forget to visit HeroParanormal.com. Don't be scared of subscribing. Smash the green button. Have a great one.
Esoteric Research Organization.
Hero Paranormal always setting up the pace, man. Crop circle tipping, Illuminati still tripping. Making those ears perk up, gonna make you question your earth. You better. Mystery bloodlines and secret society. Creepy shapeshifter says, come sit beside me.
Yeah, cozy on up.
So what's with all this spiral, acting like UFOs? So we put in Space Wolf, tiptoe through the dark, third eye blinding, tune in and blast off, blast off.
Blast off, baby.